Hello photographers, what I'd like to show you today is how to use a clipping mask to start to put together your collector photographs into one large canvas. So we're going to start by making a new file, File New, or Control N, and I'm going to call it Collectors. The size that I'm dictating here is 12 inches by 18 inches. And the resolution is going to be 300 pixels per inch, which is a good print resolution. The pixels per inch also will be important in a minute. You'll see why. So here we've got a canvas. You'll notice that it is fairly small on my screen here, but the zoom is at 8.33%, so it's actually quite a big canvas. All right. Now I'm going to be using photos that I took a while back, cute ones, of my son, close-up photos of back when he was a baby, and all with the same lighting situation, and he's like intermittently happy and upset. So with these photographs I'm going to put them together in sort of a matrix that kind of shows a progression of him from being happy to upset. If you notice that these photographs are sideways or landscape format, if yours are the same, it doesn't really matter whether you have the orientation vertical or portrait or landscape. What I'm going to do is rotate my canvas 90 degrees just so I have a landscape format. So what I'm going to be doing is creating a series of shapes in here. Let me zoom it in so we can see it a little bit more clearly by using the rectangle tool. The rectangle tool has the ability to create a shape that is a specific side. If you go to the settings, which is the settings wheel here, once you click into your shape tool, you'll notice that there's a fixed size proportion here. The fixed size that I am using is 1800 pixels by 1200 pixels. The way that I figured that out is if I wanted 3 images across by 3 images down, which is a relatively small collector photograph kind of collection. If it is 6 inches across by 6 inches by 6 inches for a total of 18, each 6 inches times 300 pixels per inch, which is the resolution, that got me to my 1800 by 1200 pixels. All right, so when it's a fixed size, what I do is once it's selected, I can go right into the corner here and click, and here I'm going to retype in my 1800 pixels by 1200 pixel sizing, hit OK, and I'm given a box that's exactly the right size. Alright, so once I have that box that's exactly the right size, I'm going to use my arrow tools to orient it right exactly into the center. Alright, and you can see that when the white goes away in the corners. Alright, so once I've got this one in the right corner, I'm going to hit Control J rather, and that's going to duplicate my layer. You can see a rectangle 1 copy, and then I'm going to use my arrow tools to shimmy it over to the middle. Alright, that was a little bit slower than using it with the mouse, but I like using this because I know it's already aligned vertically. I'm just going to align it side by side. So once I see that white, I'm going to bring it back using the arrow tools, line it up till that spot disappears, and then I'm going to do Command or Control J again and bring that over to the far right side. I'm saying Command J because if you're on a Mac, that's what you're going to be using. Here I am on my PC right now, so I'm getting PC and Mac confused. Anyway, so here we go. So you've got one row of 3 rectangles that fit exactly to size. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to highlight all 3 of them at the same time in my layers palette and hit Command J or Control J again, and that made a copy of all 3 of them all at the same time. All right, so this saves you a step or two and speeds up creating a box, because what I'm going to do is create a box or a rectangle for every single photograph that I want on my canvas. So here I've got a whole other row, a second entire row of 3 rectangles that where my photographs will go in, and then I did it one final time, copied it again with Control J with all 3 of them highlighted, and bring it down right to the bottom of the canvas. Moving it with my arrow tools. Again, a little bit slower with the arrow tools, but it's more controlled and I know that I'm getting it exactly right. There you go. So now I've got a blank canvas covered with individual rectangles, all as different shapes. Okay, so now the next step is to fill in those shapes with photographs. So I'm going to grab my folder here and I'm going to find one photo of Quinn here, my son, back when he was a baby, and kind of drag it and drop it in there. You get this, the construction box here. You double tap that in there, and you'll see that here you move it in because it's the bottom row, or the bottom shape rather, you can see it starting to get into that shape. The way that we make it actually tie together, or clip, it's called a clipping mask, is to one of 2 ways. I can go with this layer active, I can go Control Alt and G, and you'll notice that this little arrow constricts it to this rectangle, alright, which is what we're looking for. Another way to go about that is to actually hold down Alt while hovering between those 2 layers, and you get that little clipping mask icon that comes up. So two different ways to get to the same end. Now the photograph that I took was too big, so we have to transform it down to the right size. So I'm going to hit Control T, and that brings up the transform option here. I'm going to hold down Shift to constrain the proportion so I don't distort the proportions, and then I'm going to bring it down to size. Now this is when you're doing your collector photographs, this is where you can have the ability to recenter it. Say you took photos and you want them centered and to the exact same zoom level, and it wasn't exactly a shot in like that in the camera. Here's where you can use your transform tool to move things around and get it to the right size. And when you're happy with it, you can double click and it's constricted to the one box. One thing that I would watch out for is when you do have that transform out, you want to make sure that you're not transforming it too small for the rectangle, because then you're going to be left with a little extra line in the end of it. So you want to make sure that you can see the edges of the rectangle. You don't want to bring yours below that, because you're going to get some extra blank space later on when everything starts to fill in. Alright, so there you go. And you've got your first layer. So you'll notice my photographic layer is one step above the layer 1 rectangle, which was my first rectangle. So next I'm going to grab a different version, drop it in. Now here you can see before we have a clipping mask, it's overlapping that first layer. So I'm going to double click just to bring it into properly bring it into the document, and then I want to clip this to the rectangle the next rectangle. So I'm going to hit Control Alt and G, and that's going to confine it to the box. Now you can see what I'm talking about with it being in the within the confines of that one rectangle. I'm going to hit Control T to transform it once again to make sure I'm holding down Shift once again to make sure that I'm not distorting the photograph as I'm bringing it down to size and moving it around. Alright, so there we go. Now I have 2 of them on that same plane. Then I click the next rectangle and repeat. And then once you get the hang of it, and once you've created your boxes, it's just a lot of repetition. Drag your image in there. It's not clipped to the shape yet. You can either hold down Alt on the layers palette until you get that clipping mask show up, and then click. Oh, sorry, gotta apply that transformation first before that will work. There we go. Alright, now I'm gonna hit Control T again now that I know what's in the document, and transform it down to size. Move it around as I need it to. Make all those adjustments and double click. Alright, so I won't do all the steps because you can continue to go through, but I can show you at the end the final product once this is all clipped in there. Now with this rectangle, I'm keeping the rectangles as they were shot, which is a 2x3 photograph. You have the ability to change those proportions if you want. If you wanted to create, I'll just quickly create a new document here, and I'm going to rotate this. Pardon me. Rotate this sideways. If you would prefer, you don't have to keep the rectangle the same as you shot. If you prefer, if you check out on the internet, a lot of the fixed sizes are the very popular square, Instagram square. So if you wanted to create, and it suits your subject, whatever it may be, and you want to have ones that are squares instead of the initial rectangle, the process is the same. In terms of creating your rectangles, you're still going to use the move tool and move them, and copy and move those things along. It's just that with the constraint of the photograph, when you go to drop in that photograph later on, like this, I'll take a photograph of my son starting to get upset here. Alright, and creating a clipping mask this time, I'll hit Control Alt G to create that clipping mask, and hit Control T to bring it down to size. Alright, here you can see that now I'm using a square format, which is different than what it was shot obviously in the camera, but depending on the subject, that can suit the subject if you had something that fits that square instead of the initial rectangle. Alright, so there you have it. There is creating clipping masks to create a nice even photo collage with no gaps in between. Give it a shot. Okay, here I am, almost finished my grid now. I just kind of fast forwarded a few steps, so I'm going to drag in the last couple of photographs that I wanted to bring in here. Just following the same process as before, bringing them down to size and putting them in the right order. I wanted to bring your attention to this. If you look at the layers palette, the clipping mask always has to be the photograph on top and then the shape that you want to clip to underneath. So you notice that I pasted it in here, but it is out of order, so I actually need to just reorder my layer. That's just one little thing I wanted to add in there, and then clip it in, attaching it to that one layer that's underneath, making adjustments with size and centering as needed from there. Alright, so here we go. Here's my second last one, and I'll bring in my final. Really upset, losing his mind this time, making sure that it's in the right order. So I'm going to grab that and drag it on top of my last shape there, bring it down to the corner, transform it a little bit, get it down to the shape, make final adjustments on my size. Here you can see what I was saying earlier. If the shape is a little too small, then you're going to get these black box or black lines on the edge of your shape. So that's what you're trying to avoid. And double click, and now you've got a grid. Alright, when you're happy with the whole thing, you're going to go flatten your image so that it's all down to one layer, and there you have it. There's your collector mask all ready to save. Alright, good luck.